Your mind is not exhausted because you think too much. It is exhausted because you never allow it to be still. You treat it like a machine that must run without pause, and then you are surprised when it begins to smoke. We're used to blaming modern life for this restlessness. The phone, the deadlines, the constant stream of information. But the uncomfortable truth is deeper. Even if you turned everything off and sat in a quiet room, your mind would still race. New worries would appear. Old memories would replay. Imaginary arguments would start and end and start again. The noise is not only out there, it is also in here. In this reflection, you will not learn how to erase your thoughts or empty your mind. That is neither realistic nor necessary. Instead, you will see why your mind never truly rests what it is trying to do for you, and how you can relate to it differently. The goal is not silence at any cost, but a quieter center inside the movement, a way to live with fear, pain, and uncertainty without being ruled by them. The first hard truth is this: your mind is not designed for peace. It is designed for survival. For thousands of years, a restless mind was a safer mind. Your distant ancestors needed a brain that scanned for threats, replayed dangers, rehearsed what could go wrong. The anxious person who always imagined the worst was often the one who lived long enough to pass on their genes. What feels like a curse today was, for a very long time, a kind of advantage. If you notice this, your restless thoughts begin to look less like a personal failure and more like an ancient strategy. Your mind is not malfunctioning. It is overperforming. It has not understood that you're no longer sleeping on the edge of a forest, listening for predators. Instead of wolves and storms, it now watches for unread emails, awkward conversations, financial uncertainty, social judgment. The objects change, but the mechanism is the same: scan, predict, protect. Imagine a security alarm in your house. It was built to keep you safe, but over time, it becomes too sensitive. A falling leaf, a passing car, the wind at night. Everything sets it off. The alarm screams, but the danger is almost never real. This is your mind on an ordinary Tuesday, reacting to the smallest event as if your life were in danger. An unanswered message, a strange tone in someone's voice, a minor mistake at work. The siren goes off, and your thoughts run in circles, trying to solve a threat that often does not truly exist. Here is the first conceptual shift. Your restless mind is not your enemy. It is an overprotective guardian. Its job is to imagine problems before they happen, to rehearse every possible failure so you will be ready. The trouble is that it does not know when to stop. It does not notice that the constant rehearsal has become its own kind of suffering. Once you see this, a deeper reflection opens. The Stoics spoke often about control. Epictetus drew a simple but demanding line. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. We do not choose our body, our family, our era and history. We do not control the weather, the economy, or the random events that meet us in the street. But we can choose our judgments, our inner stance, our response. This line of control also runs through your own mind. You do not control which thoughts first appear. They rise from memories, fears, desires, from hidden corners of your past, and for the habits you have repeated for years. A thought shows up in your mind the way a stranger appears at your door. That first arrival is not under your command. What you can control is what happens next, whether you invite it in, feed it, and let it stay, or whether you gently let it pass. Consider a simple scene from modern life. You open your inbox and see a vague message from your boss. We need to talk tomorrow. One short line of text. Your mind immediately fills in the gaps. Maybe you are in trouble. Maybe you are being judged. Maybe something terrible is waiting. You imagine the conversation, then 5 possible versions of it, then 8 different outcomes. Your heart rate increases, your breathing shallows, and the rest of your day is colored by a situation that has not yet happened and might never happen in the way you fear. Here is the hard truth. The suffering did not come from the email. It came from a story your mind wrote around it. The mind never rests because it is always writing these stories about work, relationships, health, the future. It is running simulations, trying to control what has not yet occurred. The shift is to realize that you are not these stories. You are the one who hears them. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who wrote his reflections alone at night, lived under pressures we cannot fully imagine. Yet he observed that the mind is dyed by the color of its thoughts. If he allowed every fear and rumor in the empire to color his inner world, he would be constantly agitated. So he practiced noticing his judgments, questioning them, and returning to what was directly in front of him. This conversation, this duty, this breath. In our time, the temptations are different but equally powerful. You stand in line at the supermarket. There's a single moment of boredom. Your hand moves almost by itself to your pocket, to your phone. A small, glowing screen offers you news, distraction, entertainment, fresh reasons to worry. You scroll, compare, react. That short, harmless moment when your mind could have simply rested in the ordinary reality of standing in a line is quickly filled with stimulation. The habit becomes automatic. Any empty space must be filled. The consequence is subtle but serious. Your mind never learns how to be with itself without an object, without noise, without something to fix, judge, or consume. Silence feels like a threat rather than a refuge. So whenever you try to rest, your thoughts rush in even faster because they have never been trained to do otherwise. Before we move deeper, a brief invitation. If reflections like these help you see your own mind with more clarity and compassion, consider subscribing and leaving a thoughtful comment about how your mind tends to keep you awake at night. Your perspective adds depth to this conversation, and it may resonate with someone who quietly feels the same. Now we arrive at a quieter but more unsettling truth. Often, the reason your mind does not rest is that rest would force you to feel what thinking normally hides. As long as your thoughts keep moving, you do not have to fully face your grief, your regrets, your loneliness, or the sense that life is passing faster than you can live it. Constant mental activity is sometimes less about solving problems and more about avoiding certain truths. The Stoics did not turn away from these truths. They looked at them directly. Seneca reminded himself often that life is short, that death is not a distant possibility, but a constant companion. This was not morbid. It was a way of waking up. When you remember that everything you love is fragile and temporary, the endless mental noise begins to look a little absurd. How many of your anxious loops would survive the question, will this still matter on the last day of my life? Imagine lying awake at 2 in the morning. The room is dark. The world is quiet. But inside, nothing is still. Your mind replays an old mistake, reopens an old conversation, rehearses a future that has not yet arrived. You calculate, reframe, bargain. You promise yourself that if you can just think one more step ahead, you will finally feel at ease. Hours pass. Morning comes. You are exhausted, but none of the imagined catastrophes were resolved because they never existed in the first place. Here, the next conceptual shift appears. Rest is not the absence of thought. It is a different relationship to thought. Your mind can continue to move, and yet you can remain rooted, like a mountain under passing weather. The clouds do not need to stop moving for the sky to be spacious. In the second part of this reflection, let us turn from explanation to practice, from understanding why the mind never rests to discovering how to find a still point within its movement. The next hard truth is that you cannot think your way out of overthinking. The same instrument that creates the problem cannot, by itself, create the solution. You can gain insight, you can understand your patterns, but if you rely only on more analysis, you are adding fuel to the fire. It is like trying to calm a storm by creating smaller storms inside it. What is needed is a shift, not just in what you think, but in where you stand in relation to your thoughts. The Stoics spoke of an inner citadel, a part of you that cannot be forced, even by events outside your control. This citadel is not a wall against the world. It is a stable vantage point from which you see everything more clearly. Imagine, for a moment, that your thoughts are like people passing through a busy city square. Some are loud, some frightened, some angry, some joyful. They come and go. You're not the crowd. You are the one standing on a balcony, watching. You do not need to follow each passerby. argue with each one, or push them away. You simply recognize them and let them move along. Now, bring this image into a practical situation. You are about to give a presentation, speak in a meeting, or share something vulnerable with someone you love. Your heart beats faster. Thoughts rush in. I will fail. They will judge me. I will forget everything. Instead of arguing with these thoughts or believing them, you acknowledge them as the mind's attempt to protect you. Here is fear again. Here is the prediction of failure. You feel your feet on the ground, your breath in your chest. You choose an action that aligns with your values, not with your fear. The thoughts may not disappear, but they lose their authority. This is another conceptual shift. Courage is not the absence of anxious thoughts. It is the decision not to obey them blindly. There's also a more subtle form of restlessness, the search for a perfectly controlled life. You tell yourself that you will finally be at peace when everything is under control. Your career, your finances, your relationships, your health, your reputation. Until then, your mind feels obligated to monitor everything, to anticipate every possibility. The Stoic distinction between what is in your power and what is not is an antidote to this illusion. You cannot command outcomes. You can only command your efforts and your attitude. If you accept this, something quiet happens inside. Your mind no longer needs to chase every thread into the future. It can return to the part of the present moment that actually calls for your influence. A simple daily example. You are stuck in traffic, late for an appointment. Your mind races. They will be angry. I will appear unprofessional. This always happens to me. You grip the wheel. Your body tenses as if your tension could move the cars. But the cars do not move any faster. What changes if you quietly recognize the traffic is not in my control? My preparation, my honesty in explaining the delay, my composure when I arrive, these are. Immediately, the mind's task becomes smaller and more precise. It does not have to control the world. It only has to guide your next step. Another hard truth. If you make your inner peace conditional on external perfection, you will never rest, because the world will never arrange itself exactly to your liking. There will always be unfinished projects, unresolved conflicts, uncertain futures. Waiting for the right moment to relax is like waiting for the ocean to become still before you learn how to swim. Instead, you can practice rest inside imperfect days. Consider the modern habit of constant comparison. You scroll through images of other people's lives, and your mind starts running. I am behind. I'm not enough. I must catch up. Very quickly, your life becomes a race against invisible competitors. The mind, once again, never rests because it believes that everything you are is always slightly insufficient. Here, the Stoic emphasis on inner worth becomes a medicine. Nothing external, not status, not wealth, not praise, can make you a better human being in the deepest sense, and nothing external can take that worth away. Your character, your integrity, your courage in the face of difficulty, these are the ground on which you stand. The more you remember this, the less your mind needs to constantly measure and compare. The race slows. You can walk. There's also pain, physical, emotional, existential. When we hurt, the mind often spins the fastest. It asks, why me? It imagines how long the pain will last, how much worse it could become. It turns a single moment of discomfort into a narrative about your entire life. The Stoics did not deny pain, but they refused to give it more than it was due. They separated the immediate sensation from the additional suffering created by thought. If you burn your hand, the pain is real. But if your mind adds, this always happens. I am so careless. My day is ruined. I cannot handle this. The suffering multiplies. Learning to rest, even slightly, inside pain means noticing this difference. You say to yourself, this hurts, but the story I am adding is optional. That recognition does not magically remove the pain, but prevents your mind from turning it into a permanent identity. Try a small experiment. The next time your mind is racing, instead of trying to stop the thoughts, pause and feel the sensations in your body. Not the explanations about them, not the predictions, but the raw experience, the tightness in your chest, the warmth in your face, the buzzing in your stomach. Breathe into these sensations for a few moments, as if you were allowing them more space. Often, the body will soften slightly when it is finally acknowledged. The mind does not need to create as many explanations when it sees that the feeling has been seen. This is yet another shift. Peace does not come only from changing your thoughts, but from changing your attention, from the endless stories in your head back to the living reality of your body and the present moment. The final hard truth is simple and severe. If you do nothing, your mind will continue to rule you by habit. It will pull you into old patterns, old fears, old reactions, because that is what it knows. Inner rest is not a gift that suddenly appears. It is a discipline, a quiet practice repeated many times in small, ordinary moments. But there is great hope in this. Every time you choose to notice a thought instead of believing it automatically, every time you remember what truly lies within your control, every time you return from a future that has not yet happened to the single task or breath in front of you, you're building a new habit. You're teaching your mind that it does not need to be on high alert all the time. You're becoming, slowly, the stable point inside the movement. Your mind will probably never be empty, and that is not a failure. It is a sign that you are alive, aware, human. Thoughts will continue to rise and fall, like waves on the surface of the sea. What changes is where you live, no longer tossed helplessly from one wave to the next, but resting deeper, where the water is quieter. In that depth, fear still appears, but it does not own you. Failure still hurts, but does not define you. Pain still visits, but it does not erase the possibility of meaning. You can walk through a noisy world with a mind that still moves, but a heart that is not constantly shaken. Your mind may never rest in the way you once imagined, completely blank and silent. But you can, not by escaping your thoughts, but by no longer confusing yourself with them. Let the mind do what it was built to do. Notice, predict, imagine. And let the deepest part of you do what it was meant to do. Remain steady, open, and free. The noise may continue at the surface. You do not have to live at the surface.